and I'm going to tighten that adjuster nut. Okay, now one thing you'll notice, of course, right away is that what we did by adjusting that after we got to zero lash, we have compressed the valve spring and of course opened the valve. So right now the valve is open basically 100 thousandths because that's what we lengthened the push rod by. So slowly over time here in the next few minutes, this lifter is going to squeeze the oil out of it. Okay, that piston's going to go down to the center of the adjustment and this push rod is going to start to spin freely. Okay, and that is important to note because before you can move on to the other cylinder, you must wait for this thing to bleed down, or what will happen is your valve will actually open farther than it should because the lifter hasn't collapsed and it will contact your piston, bend your valves, and ruin your day. So wait for it to bleed down. You should be able to turn it with your fingers. That's a good, and I certainly cannot turn that with my fingers. So while I'm waiting for this one to bleed down, I'm going to go on. Actually, I've already adjusted the rear one, so that one we can see is I can spin with my fingers. So we wait for this one to bleed down, and then we will rotate the engine so that we have overlap in the rear. Verify that we are not on the Easy Start compression release trigger, and adjust the front push rods. Install and adjust. Okay, it's been about 5 or 7 minutes now, and the push rod is free spinning with my fingers, so the lifter has collapsed. So we can move on to the front cylinder. Now if we had the limited travel kit installed in this lifter, we would have done the adjustment differently, kind of as follows. We would have adjusted it down the 20 flats and waited for the lifter to bleed down, okay, giving it 5 to 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Give it a half an hour if you like. Just give it plenty of time to bleed down. And so once you've given it the time to bleed down, you start to back off the push rod, and when the push rod gets free, in other words, the spring has closed the valve and all of a sudden the push rod now has no resistance on it to spin, you'll be able to feel that as you back the wrench off. And so you count backwards from 20 flats, 19, 18, generally at 18 flats, okay, the LT kit on a twin cam at 18 flats will start to come loose. And so from that, you are now bottomed, the piston is now inside the tappet, is now bottomed on that LT kit, that washer, and you're going to back the adjustment off 1 full turn, or 6 flats. Okay, so back it off 6 flats, lock it down, and when you're done with the assembly of the rest of the bike, fire it up and give them some time to pump up. So while we're waiting for these push rods and lifters to bleed down so that we can spin them, I want to just take some time to talk about a variety of products that are out there. You could have push rods from any manufacturer with whatever threads per inch, and a lifter from any manufacturer, as long as it's a hydraulic one with a given amount of travel. We don't know what it is, it doesn't matter. But you should be able to adjust hydraulic tappets on any V-twin, not knowing what the threads per inch is, not knowing what the travel in the lifter is, by simply getting the cam on the base circle, making sure that you are indeed on the base circle. Like we mentioned here, if you have Easy Start cams, you have the compression release trigger to contend with. Make sure that you're not on that trigger. But as long as you're on the base circle of the cam, and you've taken the lash out of the push rod, then basically what you want to do is adjust that push rod longer, okay, and adjust it, 20, 40 flats. Start small so that you make sure you don't open the valve too far. But basically you can keep lengthening a push rod, and it may take you longer to do this procedure, but if you don't have the instruction sheets or you can't get on the tech line and get answers, then this is a way for you to do it yourself. So as you adjust that push rod out, okay, and it bleeds down, if it spins, you're not on the bottom of the travel of the lifter, okay? If you adjust it out and you've waited a half an hour and the lifter doesn't spin, so you've waited plenty of time for it to bleed down, okay, and it doesn't spin, you know you're on the bottom of the lifter. So you start backing off that push rod until it starts to spin freely, okay, or the resistance from backing it off gets easier or reduces. So at that point, you know you're at the bottom of the lifter. You've counted how many flats you went down, and you've counted how many flats you've come back up. And at that point, you know, say you adjusted it down 40 flats, okay? You backed it off 10, so now you're at 30 flats. Well, 30 flats from zero lash is the bottom of the travel of that lifter, okay? So if you want to be in the middle of the travel, you back it off another 15 and you lock it down. So that could be applied to any lifter and any push rod combination imaginable on a V-twin. Okay, now that the lifter has bled down, I can spin the push rods, both intake and exhaust. It's time to extend the push rod tubes and put the clips in. So. Push down the bottom. I just have a skinny straight edge screwdriver here, or standard screwdriver, and the supplied push rod clips that came with the push rod tube kit from S&S. And I basically stick it in there and sweep like so. Get the top and the bottom, you know, seated in the O-rings, and then put the clip up against the top tube and spin them in. Okay, now for the hard one. Just gotta get that connector out of the way. And that's pretty much the end of a push rod adjustment and installation.